The air inside the hearing room feels electric, humming with the tension of expectation. Reporters lean forward, pens ready, cameras blinking like impatient eyes. Everyone anticipates the same thing they always do when Vivek Ramaswamy takes the mic. A verbal sparring match, another headline clash. But then, in a single unexpected turn, the energy shifts. Vivek doesn't attack. He pauses, studies Representative Jasmine Crockett with a calm almost foreign to this space, and says, "What you just did, that's leadership." The room stools. For a heartbeat, even the cameras forget to blink. Crockett tilts her head, surprised but steady, and a faint ripple of disbelief runs through the audience. This isn't the script anyone came to watch. For once, the usual chaos of American politics takes a breath, suspended in something that feels dangerously close to respect. No shouting, no mockery, just a moment of grace. And yet, beneath that quiet, the air trembles with questions. Why here? Why now? What did he see in her that made a man known for combat choose admiration instead? The silence grows heavy. Something rare is happening, and everyone senses it's only the beginning. For years, American politics has played like a never-ending duel on live television. Voices clashing, tempers rising, applause lines rehearsed for the viral clip. Outrage became the language of power, empathy, a liability. Debates weren't about truth anymore, but about domination. Each side learned to sneer before it listened. Yet, beneath the noise, a quiet exhaustion grew. Voters began craving something different, not louder, but truer. And then came this moment. Two figures from opposite ends of the spectrum, standing under the same fluorescent glare, rewriting the rhythm of confrontation itself. Vivek Ramaswamy, the firebrand known for cutting through opponents like a blade, suddenly setting down the sword. Jasmine Crockett, fierce but composed, meeting him with eyes that said, "I see you. I hear you." In that exchange, the walls that defined them didn't vanish, but they wavered. The nation didn't know what to make of it. Was it sincerity or strategy? Was Vivek softening, or was he awakening to something larger than politics? Respect earned, not demanded. Social media buzzed, replaying the clip frame by frame, searching for clues. Something had shifted, and no one could quite explain it. But what led to this sudden burst of respect? The answer lay buried in weeks of rising tension, arguments, misquotes, private conversations off camera, and one defining moment that would reshape how millions saw both leaders. Before that quiet moment of respect, Vivek Ramaswamy had lived inside the storm. He was the embodiment of a new political archetype, polished intellect clothed in perpetual combat. Every interview was a sparring ring, every debate a battlefield. He learned early that outrage traveled faster than reason, that the loudest soundbite outlived the deepest truth. Cameras rewarded fury, headlines fed on friction, and so he gave them what they wanted: sharp words, crisp takedowns, fire delivered with a smile. But behind that precision was a man constantly walking the tightrope between ambition and authenticity. He believed in ideas, in merit, in the promise that America could reinvent itself. But somewhere along the way, the performance began to overshadow the purpose. His confidence, once rooted in conviction, started to feel like armor. The very platforms that amplified his voice also boxed him into a role he could no longer escape: the disruptor, the contrarian, the villain of the polite. Still, he played the part because it worked. Viral moments brought relevance, relevance brought power, and power for someone like Vivek felt like proof that he was being heard. Yet even as the crowds cheered and critics fumed, a question lingered: was he speaking truth, or just feeding the algorithm's hunger? In private, friends noticed his pauses, the moments between interviews where his energy dimmed, as if the applause no longer landed. It wasn't that he didn't believe what he said. It was that he no longer believed the noise was enough. The system he mastered was devouring sincerity one headline at a time. The villain, then, wasn't Vivek himself. It was the culture that mistook heat for light, and the man who, for too long, learned to shine by burning hotter than everyone else. Long before her name trended across timelines, Jasmine Crockett was fighting battles that never made the news. She came from communities where struggle wasn't a slogan. It was the air people breathed. She learned early that dignity was not something granted by the powerful, but something you held on to even when the world tried to take it from you. Law school sharpened her edge. Activism gave her fire. In courtrooms and community meetings, she spoke not to impress, but to defend. Every victory was hard-won, every setback another lesson in resilience. When she stepped into Congress, she brought that same grounded courage. But Washington was a different kind of battlefield, one lined with polite dismissals and coded condescension. Her intelligence was questioned, her passion mislabeled as attitude. Commentators sneered, pundits laughed, and yet she refused to shrink. She didn't trade grace for rage. She turned both into power. Her voice carried the rhythm of the people who raised her, the ones who never had the privilege of being heard. Every time she took the mic, she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for those who were never handed one. In hearings, she met arrogance with poise, and subtle disrespect with clarity so sharp it cut through the noise. She didn't need to shout to command attention. The truth did that for her. And when others resorted to spectacle, she leaned on something steadier: conviction. For her, leadership wasn't about winning arguments. It was about surviving them with integrity intact. Each glance, each rebuttal, each carefully measured pause became a form of defiance. She stood tall not because she wanted to be seen, but because she refused to be erased. And so, when the cameras turned toward her that day, when the nation watched as Vivek Ramaswamy prepared to clash, no one expected what would follow. They saw her as another target in the cycle of televised conflict. What they didn't see was the years of armor she'd already built, the calm that comes only from knowing who you are. That was the power she carried, quiet, unwavering, unapologetically hers, the kind of power that could disarm even the loudest room. The hearing room hummed with an almost electric stillness, the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. Cameras tilted toward the panel, staffers whispered predictions. Everyone knew what was coming. Vivek Ramaswamy versus Jasmine Crockett. Two voices from opposite worlds, both sharp enough to cut through steel. He leaned forward, his tone calm but loaded, a challenge wrapped in courtesy. His question wasn't just policy, it was provocation, the kind designed to test composure, to bait emotion. Jasmine didn't flinch. She let the silence stretch just long enough to reclaim the tempo. When she finally spoke, her words landed like precision strikes, clean, measured, and undeniably confident. "With respect, Congressman," she said softly, "facts don't bend for anyone's comfort." A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the gallery. Even Vivek's eyes flickered, a flash of something between surprise and admiration. Every question felt like a chess move, every answer a counter. He pressed harder, framing hypotheticals to corner her. She sidestepped them with language so deft it turned his own arguments into reflections. He was quick, she was patient. He struck with logic, she answered with lived truth. The tension was magnetic. The audience leaned forward, caught between anticipation and awe. Commentators watching from monitors exchanged glances that said it all. This wasn't another shouting match. This was something rarer, two minds meeting at full voltage without losing control. Ramaswamy's rhythm began to shift. The aggression that usually defined him softened just slightly, replaced by something more contemplative. It wasn't defeat, it was recognition. For once, he wasn't fighting to win a clip. He was trying to understand the person across from him. Crockett held his gaze steady and unafraid. The air between them felt charged, unspoken, yet heavy with meaning. The hearing wasn't just about policy anymore. It had become a mirror, reflecting the possibility of civility in an age addicted to conflict. And as the final question echoed through the chamber, no one realized they were watching the tension before transformation, the precise moment before something utterly unexpected would unfold. The final exchange begins like every other tense moment before it. Sharp questions, sharp minds, the hum of anticipation in the air. But something in Vivek's tone shifts, almost imperceptibly at first. He leans back, studies Jasmine as though seeing her for the first time, not as an opponent, but as a reflection. His usual rapid cadence slows, the confidence remains, but the edge softens. "You know, what you just articulated, that's leadership." The words fall heavy, clean, final. The room doesn't quite register what's happened. A collective pause swells in the silence. Even the cameras seem to hesitate before capturing the moment. A staffer in the corner looks up, startled, unsure whether to applaud or simply breathe. Across the aisle, a few eyebrows rise. Did Vivek Ramaswamy just give Jasmine her flowers on live TV? This is what leadership looks like. For once, Congress went viral for something good. It spreads like a spark in dry grass. Clips replay in slow motion, the tilt of his head, her poised reaction, the breathless stillness that followed. On cable reruns that night, pundits replay the moment again and again, searching for subtext. Was it strategic, sincere, a political anomaly or a cultural shift? But in the raw footage, the truth is simpler. A man known for verbal duels chooses dignity instead of dominance. He doesn't surrender his beliefs. He elevates the discourse. In a world addicted to outrage, he chooses respect. You can feel the transformation ripple outward. Vivek's face softens, not a grin, not relief, but quiet acknowledgement. He nods once toward Jasmine, a gesture almost ceremonial in its humility. She meets it with the kind of grace that requires no words. Two leaders from opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide stand momentarily on common ground, and the chamber feels holy in its silence. Outside those walls, the reaction grows louder. Hashtags form mid-sentence. Opinion writers race to their keyboards. CNN calls it the most surprising moment of political grace in years. TikTok fills with reaction clips, young voters mouthing the line, "That's leadership." For a generation raised on cynicism, it feels like proof that humanity can still slip through the cracks of politics. But inside the room, though, time seems to stretch. Vivek's hands rest folded on the table. His posture for once is still. Jasmine takes a breath, the kind that carries both relief and reverence. She doesn't gloat, doesn't respond with triumph. Instead, she nods ever so slightly, allowing the moment to live without decoration. No one claps, no one dares. The silence itself becomes the applause. Later, as the journalists swarm the hallways, the footage will loop endlessly, the still frame of two figures defying the performance politics that made them famous. Commentators will argue about motives, about optics, about everything except the one thing that mattered most, the feeling it gave people watching. Because something in that room shifted. It wasn't policy, it wasn't compromise. It was perspective. For a flicker of time, the crowd saw that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply recognizes strength in someone else. And as the hearing draws to a close, you can sense that no one wants it to end. The usual applause never comes. The moment doesn't need it. It lingers in the hush between them, the quiet acknowledgement that, despite everything, grace is still possible in the American experiment. Vivek gathers his notes, but his gaze stays fixed on Jasmine a second longer, not as an adversary, not even as an equal, as a reminder that truth, when spoken with courage, commands respect from even the fiercest opponent. Outside, the reporters shout questions. Inside, the echo of that single sentence, "That's leadership," still vibrates against the marble walls, refusing to fade. Within hours, the clip floods every corner of the internet. The moment those four simple words, "That's leadership," becomes impossible to escape. Hashtags light up timelines like fireworks. Hashtag respect over rhetoric. Hashtag Vivek and Jasmine. Hashtag proud moment. For once, the trending topics aren't about scandal or outrage, but something gentler, something that feels almost foreign to politics: decency. Commentators scramble to define it. Some call it a turning point for Vivek Ramaswamy, proof that even the fiercest debater can find grace. Others dismiss it as a strategy, a shrewd play for sympathy. But in living rooms, classrooms, and coffee shops, ordinary Americans watch the clip and feel something shift. One tweet goes viral. "This gave me hope. Maybe we're not as divided as they want us to believe." Late-night hosts replay the footage with stunned admiration. On one show, the audience breaks into applause mid-monologue. Influencers cut reaction videos, their voices soft with awe. "This," they say, pointing to the clip, "this is what leadership should look like. Not louder, but better." Celebrities repost with simple captions, "Finally, more of this. Faith restored." Think pieces flood digital magazines. The Atlantic calls it a fleeting but vital reminder of civic grace. Rolling Stone writes, "When outrage fatigue met integrity, the internet stopped to listen." Cable networks analyze it from every angle, their pundits debating whether this was vulnerability or vision. But beneath the talking heads and the noise, something undeniable happens. People start sharing it, not to argue, but to feel. And somewhere between the hashtags and hot takes, the real story emerges. For a brief moment, America saw itself reflected not in division, but in dignity. The image of a Republican entrepreneur praising a Black Democratic congresswoman becomes more than politics. It becomes possibility. As the week unfolds, the clip keeps resurfacing. Each time it plays, it reignites that same rare feeling, a reminder that respect can still break the algorithm. When the noise of the headlines finally fades, what remains is something deeper, a moment that refuses to be reduced to politics. Vivek Ramaswamy and Jasmine Crockett, two figures molded by vastly different worlds, ended up proving the same truth: that courage and humility are not opposites. They are, in fact, the twin pillars of real leadership. In a culture addicted to outrage, their exchange reminded people that dignity still has power. The real victory wasn't in who spoke louder or who won the argument. It was in who chose respect over performance. For a fleeting instant, the nation glimpsed what leadership could look like when service outshines ego, when truth outlasts pride. Clips kept replaying, not because they were dramatic, but because they were decent. A rare kind of decency that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. People shared it across divides, progressives, conservatives, independents, not as a statement, but as a sigh of relief. One comment beneath the viral video read, "It wasn't about party lines that day. It was about being proud to be American. And that, perhaps, was the quiet revolution of it all. Not a grand policy shift, not a viral outrage cycle. Just two voices meeting in mutual recognition. In that recognition, millions saw what they had been yearning for. Proof that decency still moves hearts faster than hate. The hearing room is long empty now, but the echo of that moment lingers, soft, steady, alive. It whispers that maybe leadership isn't about defeating someone across the table, but about seeing them fully and still choosing respect. Dignity over division, respect over rhetoric, service over ego. And for one brief luminous day, America remembered that the soul of democracy is not argument, it's empathy. In a world where politics so often feels like noise, this moment stood apart, a rare spark of clarity cutting through the chaos. Vivek Ramaswamy lauds Jasmine Crockett's leadership. His rare respect amazes all. It wasn't just a headline, it was a heartbeat, a glimpse of what happens when conviction meets humility, when two powerful voices choose to elevate instead of attack. This wasn't about right or left, victory or defeat. It was about remembering that integrity still resonates louder than outrage, and that respect, once seen as weakness, might just be our greatest strength. Maybe, just maybe, this is how change begins, not with louder voices, but with better ones. If you believe respect still has a place in leadership, share this story. Subscribe for more moments that remind us who we are, what we stand for, and what we can still become together.